Lovely lady on my left, I didn't know what she's been doing for the last 14 years, so I just found out a little bit, and it's absolutely amazing what she's done. And I've been doing the same thing for 40 years from the old days. But she, can just give a nutshell like you just told me about what you've done since leaving Woodstock. It's amazing.
Okay, so my name's Shruti and I was the class of 2000. And after Woodstock, I moved to the States for undergrad, and I went to Northwestern, and I studied economics and fine art. And as much as I thought I loved economics while I was at Woodstock, because I loved Ms. Chandra's economics class, I realized I actually really didn't like it when I got to the States. And ended up kind of exploring, and I think one of the things I did learn at Woodstock was to try new things and kind of, not kind of, you weren't like put in a box, and that kind of really influenced a lot of my decisions moving forward. And then fast forward, I guess, and I'm still, I'm only 14 years after your 40 years, so I'm still learning. And I think 4 is a good number. I just produced 4 feature films. The 4th premieres at Venice this year, which is pretty exciting. And I've been making movies, and I ended up getting, while I came to the States for an undergrad degree in economics and fine art, I realized my love of indecision continued through my master's, where I then got an MBA and an MFA together, and then started making movies. And it's interesting because I'm missing the panel in print, because I also work at Condé Nast, which is a media company, and I produce content in the entertainment division, and I focus on Vogue, so I'm a little better dressed nowadays.
You're always well dressed, even in Woodstock days. It's a family tradition.
Lots more layers, but that's a really weird overview. But what's really interesting is that Tom is American but lives in India, and I'm Indian, and I'm in entertainment here, and so clearly anything goes.
Well, I have to beg to differ. I'm very much an Indian.
You're probably more than me. Don't hold your hair.
But yes, from an American background, yes, absolutely. But it's amazing. She works behind the camera, so to speak, and I work in front of the camera. But we were just having a discussion about how both jobs in front of the camera and behind the camera are very intimately connected. And if the person in front of the camera is not happy, you're not going to get much out of that person. And the person behind the camera, years ago I was very fortunate to make a film with Richard Attenborough. Not Gandhi, that came afterwards, but a film called The Chess Players, in which I got a chance to act with Richard Attenborough. And he was interviewed like this in Kolkata a long time ago. That time he was making a film called A Bridge Too Far. And a very famous Bengali actress asked him, as a director and an actor, how important is the actor to you when you're a director? And he said the actor is the most important person on the entire set. And the entire purpose of the production team is to keep the actor happy. So this was music to my ears. In many a film, I think we actors feel that we're sort of something which is just added on because someone has to be in front of the camera. But we were just talking how it's very interesting that you behind the camera and I in front of the camera. After working for 40 years, I've become much more interested in what is going on behind the camera also. And you realize how important that relationship is between a good production team and the performers. And when the two gel, which I think you've seen it happen, I've seen it happen, it is absolute heaven. And then acting becomes the easiest thing in the world. And when it doesn't gel, acting can be the most difficult thing in the world. So it's a very interesting equation.
I mean, definitely, and I've had the good fortune of working on a few movies, and the first one comes out in theaters in October, and I work a lot with an actor, James Franco, who many of you, I think, have heard of. And James, we've done 3 movies together, and the first movie, he plays the lead in it, and there's Mila Kunis and Jessica Chastain and Zach Braff.
What is the film that's coming out?
It's called The Color of Time. It was called Tar. I'm still getting used to our distributor just changing bad stuff happens too. And when I talk about, I direct and I produce. On this movie, I was one of the directors. There were 12 of us, and it stemmed from a graduate student film project. It was very ambitious, low budget, Hollywood talent. I mean, I was really kind of thrown into the deep end to learn to produce my first film, while getting those 2 masters in indecision. So I made it very easy for myself. And on that movie, when I'm talking about producing a film, I mean, producing is also the most abused word probably in film because it means many things. It's the person who finances it, it's the person who also may contain the property that you are adapting material from. And most of the time, my role as a producer involves, I work very closely with the writers and directors and the creative team to understand the vision and the story they want to tell and building architecture around it and structure. So I deal with sometimes raising the money, but also understanding how to spend the money and how to put the team together and then handle the deals and sales. So that's a few things.
You're right. The producer, as an actor, the producer is often the villain in the piece because the producer is the one who's supposed to pay us. I'll just tell you a very funny story. When we were shooting the chess players, the producer was a gentleman called Suresh Jindal. And he's heard the story, so I'm not talking behind his back. We had a particular scene we were supposed to do, and Satyajit Ray, who was the director, gave 2 days for the scene. And we managed to finish it in a day and a half. Now he did something then which I've never had happen again in 40 years. At lunch on the 2nd day, he said, "Pack up, everybody go home and take it easy." Because Tom and Richard had finished the scene in a day and a half and have a nice time for half a day. So I was thrilled. Well, I was on a per day contract. Yes. When Suresh Jindal came to pay me the amount, I will not tell. Basically, it was half of nothing. He gave me half pay for that day. I said, "Are you out of your mind?" He said, "You only work for half a day." And I said, "That's true. But that wasn't my choice, that was your director's choice." So I got paid half of next to nothing for doing a good job. Conrad, I learned a lesson that day. Act very slowly and very badly. If you're on a per day basis, act very slowly and very badly. But it was amazing. So that was the lesson.
Well, the good thing with union roles in the States for actors is that you can even be there for 2 hours.
And you get paid. Well, let me tell you something. Sorry. Just last month I was shooting a film in Hollywood, illegally. Being directed by a Woodstock student, Sunil Anand, class of 74. Anyone here from the class of 74? Okay, he was directing it. And I worked for 4 days in your famous Hollywood. Let me tell you, there is no difference between Hollywood and Bombay. All the same hassles, all the same problems, all the same egos, exactly the same. You can be unionized, you can be stereo, whatever you wanted to do. Homogenized, it's exactly the same. And I was delighted to see the same ego hassles, that the extras have the same problems, they're not getting proper food, they're not getting proper, it's exactly the same. Filmmaking is the same in any place in the world, and it's a great, great experience.
But I will have to say, I do have to blame, like Deidre said, that you've been hired and you hire, your Woodstock, or people from Woodstock. And the way I ended up in film, because I didn't study it in undergrad, well, I took a theory class called Women in Indian Cinema, and I saw Satyajit Ray's Father Vanshuli, and that's when I was like,
wow.
That's,
where did you
that's
see
it.
this?
That was when I was in school at Northwestern. And it was just a class that fit my schedule for the credit, and it was one of those accidental classes I took my junior year that really ended up changing things. And then I spent the fall of my senior year working on some movies in Bombay that were being directed by a Woodstock graduate, who was a family friend of mine, Ruchi Narayan's class of 91. And I ended up I'd never even been on a movie set before. All my friends were recruiting for finance jobs, and that was kind of meant to be my track. And then here I tootled off to Bombay, and my dad was freaking out, being like, "I did not send you to college in America to go make movies in Bombay." Now I think he's a little okay with that decision, a little bit maybe, but he was having a bit of a panic.
All the Woodstock connections,
So But yeah, I blame Ruchi, and I guess I blame Woodstock for everything.
Well, having spent many a fine year with young Conrad here at Woodstock, I went off to Yale University. I lasted for a year and a half, and I came back home to India. So when people said, what university did you go to? I said, I went to the University of Toronto. मैं तुरंत गया और तुरंत वापस आया. But like Shruti, if someone had said in my senior year at Woodstock that I would become a film actor, it never crossed my mind. In fact, we were just listening to Mr. Long's talk about things. I mean, I don't know, how many of you in your senior years at Woodstock thought about doing what you eventually did do? There you are. There's a what are you doing, and what you actually thought about in your senior year at Woodstock?
I did. I always wanted to be involved in early childhood education and preschool.
Yes.
And I did it, and I did it well, and I knew what I wanted to do. And
Fantastic. Fantastic. Anybody else? Yes.
I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I strayed a little bit and then stayed there.
And there you are.
There's
Fantastic. Yes.
I developed a love of biology growing up in a wonderful place in India and stuck with it the rest of my life.
Fantastic.
And I was an activist from age 5 on.
Well, you are the exceptions that prove the rule. This is fantastic. I'm happy. Yes, you also.
Music.
Music.
But when I was a senior, I never will forget sitting by Midlands with like 4 of my classmates, and we were all predicting what we were going to be doing with our lives. And we were like, Ariadna, you're going to go into consulting, and Sam, you're going to go into banking, and Tenzin, you're going to be a lawyer, and Melanie, you're also going to be a lawyer. And I was so excited for my turn. And they all looked at me and they said, Shruti, you'll be one of 2 things. You will either be a kindergarten art teacher or a gym instructor. I brought this up with them a few months ago.
Well, there's still a chance. I mean, if your film doesn't do well, you might go back to. I'm just teasing. You might go back to one of those professions. Scott's up.
I want to change the subject, if I might.
You always do.
Tom, you have acted both as in film as well as on the stage. I wonder if there's any difference in those kinds of acting and which you prefer or don't. Whatever you'd like to comment about that, I'd be interested in hearing.
This is it's a question which is often asked, but you've asked it in a much better way than most Indian journalists do. It's basically the same thing. The environment is different. It's a little bit like studying all by yourself in the library and studying in a classroom attending a classroom. You're basically studying in both instances. And the same, I don't know if there's any rules to acting, but the same passion and the same interest you've got to have in front of it. Obviously there are technical differences. Very obviously, once you're on the stage and you started a play like Maulana Azad, which you saw a bit of last night, that's 2.5 hours on the stage by yourself. So if you get lost, which it happened many times in the beginning when I used to do the play, when you see the whole play, Maulana drinks a lot of tea in the course of the play. Whenever I got lost, I would drink tea and start some other conversation. I had a better bladder in those days. But in front of the camera, Meryl Streep said something, and it's very rare that you have an actor and actress say something which really is useful. And I think, I think as journalists, don't ask us good questions. We have got a lot to share, but anyway, Meryl Streep said that in front of a camera, you have to only think, and your thought is recorded in front of a camera. Whereas on stage, you have to think on stage also, but it may not be recorded. A friend of mine, when he saw Maulana the first time, he's a theatre person, and he was sitting quite near the back that day when I performed. And he said, Tom, but you were not doing anything. I said, what said, I'll see it again. And he saw it again sitting closer. And he said, yes, you were doing a great deal. So that is there. It's that intimacy in front of the camera. The other thing is that when you're acting on stage, even though it's unreal, basically one of the big problems I had, and this is where Woodstock was a bit of a handicap. Woodstock, is, we all know, tried to teach us, as Mr. Long said, this thing about being a full person, an honest person, etc. Acting is the most dishonest profession in the world. Because you're faking it.
And I work with liars all the time.
You're faking it. So it took me a long time to realize that it was okay to be faking it. But in front of the camera, you've got no chance of faking it at all. Because if you're a little bit uneasy or a little bit tense or a little bit the camera picks you up, boom. But on the other side, when you are on song and you're working well, the camera makes you look like $1 million. So it goes, but on stage, the number of times where I've made a mistake or someone I'm acting with has made a mistake, and you learn how to, this is what I think where Woodstock really, really helped me a great, great deal, because Glenn, all of us, all those talent shows we did, and all the times one was on Parker Hall stage making speeches or comparing whatever, we were winging it the entire time. And Mrs. Kapadia always reminds me, I forget, God bless Mrs. Kapadia, in Hindi class, every 15th August we would put on a play in Hindi, which we would write and direct and dream up ourselves. And she says in 5th grade I played Shakuntala. I don't remember playing but she swears that. Anyway, so that Woodstock, and of course Joan and Frenchie Brown. I remember them yesterday evening. I don't know how many of you were fortunate, there you are, to work with Joan and Frenchie Brown. There you are, many of us. They were the most incredible combination of precision and inspiration. Frenchie was more precision, and Joan was the inspiration. And these two, what I learned in 2 years in oral expression with them, I mean, I studied at the best film school in all of Asia, in Pune for 2 years. My guru there is a great man. I learned immense things from him. But, as somebody just said, Woodstock, who said that? I think Woodstock prepared him for college. And without Woodstock, he wouldn't, without Joan and Frenchie Brown and Woodstock, even though I never thought about acting as a profession, I couldn't have made that incredibly audacious jump in 1972. And I mean, again, I have to tell a little bit of my own story so you realize the Film Institute in Pune, now it's Pune, but I like the old names, is and was the finest film institute in all of Asia. And in 1972, every second actor or actress coming into mainly Hindi films was coming from the Film Institute. The names go on endlessly. So sitting there in hostel, and I got there was a magazine called Star and Style, which was in Filmfare with the two big magazines. They had the advertisement if you wanted to join the film acting course. So I sent in my application I think in March or April of 1972, and you people from Landau, all of you will love this. You had to send a 5 rupee postal money order with your application. Well, my salary was 300 rupees, so out of that I had to. So when I went to that little post office there in Landau Bazaar, it's still there by the way, and I went to the post wala and said, I've got to send the 5 rupee money order too. And he said, why do you want to send it? I said, don't tell anyone I'm applying for the acting course. He said, okay, I won't tell anyone. He said, it'll take a little while. So I went down to the clock tower to have a cup of tea. By the time I came back, the entire Landau Bazaar knew that I was applying for the acting course. And of course, all the jokes started then. You ever seen your face in the mirror and who do you think you are and all that. But eventually I got through the initial stage, and then we were called to Delhi for the auditions. This was on the 17th of July, 1972. What do you got something to say about the same? Okay. So my dear friend Ajay Mark and I, all you IB Bank wallahs know Ajay Mark very well. Many of you would say, Is there anyone here who does not know who Ajay Mark is? Oh, well, he's been the PT master at Woodstock for the last 30. You worked with him then, 35 years. Didn't you? So we got on Peter Lugg's motorcycle and we drove off to Delhi in the heat of June. We had no licenses, we had no insurance. Ajay Mark had never driven a motorcycle before. We broke down near to Ghaziabad. And we called my father, he came and rescued us in his big van. We put the bike in. Anyway, that's another story. So I show up there and there's more than 1,000 people trying to get in, out of which eventually 2 of us were chosen. So what are the percentages? I don't know. Connor, you're good at maths. Anyway. You had to do a piece of your own. Now this is where Woodstock came in immensely handy because I did something which we had done in the talent shows. I played 3 characters sitting in a second-class railway compartment going through the Punjab. One was Sardarji, one was Sardarji's friend, and one was a white man. And Sardarji doesn't know that white man knows Hindi. So Sardarji tells his friend, कि भाई ये जो मेरी बगल में अंग्रेज बैठा हुआ है, मैं इसका बेवकूफ बनाता हूँ. So the friend says, तू बच के रहा सरदार, कहीं तू ना बेवकूफ बन जाए. So then he tells his, hello my friend, how are you? And the American says, मैं बहुत अच्छा हूँ, आप कैसे हैं? So this is how it started. This is all Woodstock. We did this for years in the talent show, nothing more or nothing less than this. Well, we had an esteemed panel of about 5 people, including a very famous actress, a very famous director, and my acting guru in the future. I got through about 3 or 4 sentences. They all started laughing. And they said, okay, you can go now. I said, that's the end of my... And I'd given up my Woodstock job. So I thought, Glenn, I said I was finished. I better go back to Jagadri and start teaching there again. But there was a door like that in the corner. You know, they have those round windows like in the restaurants. And I was, naturally I was in a juba. I was an oddity. Who's this white guy come to apply for the acting course? And there were about 16 faces all looking in through this window. And I got out of that room and I said, I'll have to get Ajay Mark to get me a job at Woodstock again now. And they all picked me up and started saying, you've been selected, you've been selected. I said, I've been selected. The entire audition team is laughing at me. They said they're not laughing at you, they're laughing with you. They loved what you were doing. And those guys were absolutely right. I got selected on a base of a skit which were not even gotten by the selection committee. Frenchie Brown never would have accepted this talent show. But I got selected on the base of that. So this is Woodstock. And so all of you have said, or like even this previous committee, Woodstock, if nothing else, teaches you to think on your feet and to roll with the punches. And it worked. And 40 years later, yes, I can see you going like this.
That's our big side conversation.
So anyway, so Woodstock gave me tremendous training in ways that I never expected, just like so many of the people on the previous panel were saying, and for you. And then of course I got selected, but at that time I had an American passport, and the Film Institute in Pune is run by the US, by the Indian government, and the Indian government didn't want to pay money to have some American study acting. But that's because in the procedure, they never asked nationality in the application forms. And I gave my entire interview in Hindi, so they said, this is some strange looking Indian. Then they find out that this fellow is a strange looking American. So Scott Saab, I was stuck. For 2.5 months, I stayed with Ernie and Alfie Campbell. Many of you know Ernie and Alfie Campbell at 5 at Attendant Road, not knowing what my future was. And I sent telegrams to replied paid telegrams to the Film Institute. Hey, bhai, what is position? So they said, just be patient. And I said, okay. Well, after about 2 months, I was like a patient in a hospital. That's the type of patient I was. Anyway, eventually through all sorts of, there again Woodstock came in handy. Kabir Singh. How many of you know Kabir Singh? Great man. He knew I.K. Gujral. Now, how many of you know I.K. Gujral? There you are. I.K. Gujral was the former Prime Minister of India. At that time, he was the Minister of Information and Broadcasting. And the Film Institute Pune came under his jurisdiction. So when Kabir Singh realized my plight, he went to Mr. I.K. Gujral and said, he's a fine boy, do something about this. So the machinery, the wheel of machinery turned slowly, and 2.5 months later, I got a telegram from the Film and Television Institute Pune that you have been selected for first year acting course. What is the first thing I did? I sent 150 rupees to Ajay Mark in Mussoorie, buy sweets for everybody. So he went to Omi's sweet shop and bought 100, and I hope he spent all his. Knowing Ajay Mark, he probably put 50 rupees in his pocket. तेनों ने मिली ऐसी? गलत बात है, गलत बात है. तब तो बहुत छोटी सी.
We also, just as a sidebar, we have to give props to my aunt who went to Weinberg Allen, and she's with all the Woodstock people here, who came with me.
We all know there's
and my mom and Tom are old friends from history.
We will not get into that right now. But there is a school across the valley called Weinberg Allen. And not only you, but the great Ajay Mark actually studied there. So this man we mentioned so many times, he was denied access to Woodstock. He was not deemed worthy of a fine school. So he went to Weinberg Allen, became the biggest track star in the history of Weinberg Allen. He was the captain of the school. And let me tell you, he's never forgotten this slight to his honor. Until today, he's worked at Woodstock for 35 years. His heart is still in, maybe not in Allen, but it's definitely in Weinberg. But anyway, go. Now you take.
And a few of you may actually know my grandmother, Krina Aurora.
Great woman. Yes.
I was listening to some show recently, and they were talking about how the Indian Bollywood type movies are becoming more influential here in America, because not only are there's an increase in interest in India and the movies, but also a lot of people are getting very tired of the violence and the type of movies that Americans are producing, and they like the fluff type pieces that are typical of the Bollywood type movies. Do you see that really occurring, or is there more influence from the
Shruti, you will.
film industry?
I can just say the other day, my son and I were trying to find a film to watch in Boston, and we came across Ek Villain, which is a film which just released in Bombay. It was running in one of the main theaters in Boston. And sadly, those lovely, fluffy, nice, romantic films which we are famous for, we stopped making about 15, 20 years ago. We make the most violent films you've ever seen. It's horrible. It's horrible. We have always been influenced by Hollywood. And by the way, Bollywood is a term that we don't accept. We don't work in Bollywood. We work in the Hindi film industry in Mumbai. Bollywood for us is a very demeaning title. Are we less than Hollywood? Of course we're not. Hollywood is great, we are great. So we don't like the term Bollywood, but that's something just between us and the wall. But unfortunately, in the last, especially since India opened up in 91, 92, when the market was opened up, we have been even more deeply influenced. The TV serial Friends, which of course you all know, the entire generation of young Indian actors who were born anytime like after 85, you see their acting, they all act like the actors from Friends. All of them. And nothing wrong with Friends, I'm not very fond of the thing myself, but that whole glib way of tuck, 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 talking, this was not Hindi film acting. Now every second guy or girl is straight out of Friends. So we have picked up some good things from the West and some things which are not. But unfortunately, I wish I could say that our films are still fluffy and full of hope, and they're not.
But it's almost like there are more international takes on those Indian stories, which are very popular in the States and internationally. So there was a big argument when Slumdog Millionaire came out, whether that was an Indian film or not. Because it had a British director, it had international financing, and Then you have movies like The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, and now there's a second version, and then you have The $1 Million Arm, which was done by Disney. And there's a lot of money coming from India to Hollywood studios that are interested in these kind of aspirational stories, because this is a great setting for that.
Absolutely. I mean, you take Slumdog Millionaire, and I know it won Oscars and things. I can show you 5 Hindi films on the same subject, which are far better than Slumdog Millionaire. Far better. Made in India by Indian directors, no one knows about. There's a film called Dharavi. Dharavi is that section of Bombay where that Slumdog Millionaire was shot. Dharavi is 100 times better film than Slumdog Millionaire. 100 times. But because it's an Indian director, it didn't get. A very dear friend of mine, Gulzar, who wrote the songs for Slumdog Millionaire, brilliant writer. 2 of the worst songs he ever wrote, he wrote for Slumdog Millionaire. He got the Oscar for them. It's a fact. So I teased him and I said, he says, Tom, it's very simple. To win an Oscar award, your film has to be released within a 100-mile radius of Los Angeles, California. Otherwise, you cannot qualify for an Oscar. So in other words, how many brilliant films never get released within a 100-mile radius of Los Angeles? So the Oscars, I'm nothing, Oscar is a great award. But here's a man, Gulzar, and many of you know Gulzar. He is brilliant. He writes 2 very mediocre songs for a mediocre film, which gets released within a 100-mile radius of Los Angeles. And he wins an Oscar award. This is...
They spend a lot of money on
They
this.
spend a lot of money getting those Oscar awards. This is, it's, I mean, everyone looks at things from their own perspective. And a friend of mine, very dear friend, I won't take his name, he's connected with the Methodist Church. I'm giving hints. The Methodist Church is doing extremely good work in Dharavi, those slums, for the last 30, 40 years before Slumdog Millionaire was ever even thought of. This man, having seen Slumdog Millionaire, he's very high up in the Methodist Church. He says, oh, fantastic. Now people know there's a problem. I said, what are you talking about? Your church has been working in those same slums for 40 years. Casa has been working in those same slums. And you're saying that because of Slumdog Millionaire, suddenly people know about the poverty in Dharavi? This is the way everything gets its own spin on it.
But also, at the same time, there have been amazing movies made by Indian directors that when they came out in India were really not celebrated or recognized, and it took movies like Batra Panchali to win awards at Cannes for that to be able to go back to India. Because when Satyajit Ray made that movie, people in India really were not supportive of that, till he won the Golden Lion. And then you have movies like Salam Bombay, or even like Miss Lovely that had to go to Cannes and Toronto, or even like Subsidies that went to Toronto that had to go live abroad first and have international film festival acclaim, or even The Lunchbox, for that to then open in India with great promise and win awards. But it had to kind of show that these were amazing Indian stories made by Indian filmmakers that could really connect with an international audience for Indians to connect with it. So there's a lot of stuff in flux right now.
There are many, I think what we're trying to say is things are not as simple as it used to be. That this was I don't want to say it, this was a Bollywood film, this is a Hollywood film. It's all, there's a lot of intermingling, intermixing going on, and most of it is positive. I've just brought out not the negative, but the realistic side of it. This film that Miss Lovely you just mentioned, a very dear friend of mine played one of the main roles. That brilliant film made in India, as you said, had to go through all the festivals and make a name in festivals and then come back. But even then, it didn't run in India. It didn't. But the Hindi film that we've heard about, you know, the songs and the romance and the very positive endings, those films have pretty much died out in the last 20 years. We don't make films like that. We've become very realistic. We've taken up very bold themes. There was a film, there was a very famous murder in Delhi, I think 5 or 6 years ago. Jessica was killed. And they made a film on this murder. Very real, a very famous runner. How many of you remember Milkha Singh from the old days of... They made a film on the life of Milkha Singh, 50 years later. But who would have thought that any Hindi film will be made on the life? So we are moving into much more thoughtful, realistic, the good side of it. The bad side is our films have become very that computerized, obscene violence which we see. You know, one guy is jumping up in the air 50 feet and splitting 6 people into pieces. It is ridiculous. We're doing exactly the same thing. That matrix violence, and I don't get upset about things very easily, but I think violence in cinema is a big problem. Not sex. Sex in cinema to me is not a problem. Violence is a problem. Violence in any cinema is a big problem. Because the way people get influenced by violence, I don't think pornography influences people as much as violence. And I really am frightened by the violence that I see. I mean, in Indian television now we've got incredible violence. We've got enough violence in real life which we're not dealing with. And you see these, I mean, there's a very famous South Indian film star, Rajinikanth. How many have seen a Rajinikanth film? Okay? Rajinikanth in real life is about 5'4", scrawny guy, he's lost his hair. And his most recent film has him doing all sorts of mid-air kicks and jumps and slicing people into pieces. I mean, he's made billions and billions of rupees. Why does he have to make another violent film? But they do. And it depresses me immensely. We have Amir Khan, a brilliant producer, director, actor, one of our finest. He will make some very sensitive film. The next film he'll make, you know, he's building up his body and showing his abs and killing 6 people in one blow. Why? Why? I don't know.
What does the producer say the answer is?
Money. They're making money out of it. But you can make, yes, sorry, yes.
People want it.
But people want, but you, why do you want to give people what they want if it's not right? Money, but there are some of the finest, Satyajit Ray. I had the honor of working with that man. He never made millions. He made good money. He had a good life. But you see, he never showed me, he showed emotional violence. He showed mental violence. But did he show people? Because, you see, many of my dear friends who are actors, you know, they pick up these machine guns in these films and mow down 25 people. In real life, you tell that person to pick up the machine gun, he won't be able to pick it up. So all the crores and crores of people who are like him, they'll think, oh, we can also pick up a machine gun. You can't. How many of you have ever, in real life, not hunting, aside from hunting when you're killing animals, how many of you have been in a situation where bullets are actually flying, being aimed at human beings? It's quite an experience, right? It is frightening. It scares, I've been there. And we show this in cinema like it's like in Hindi, bayan ka khel hai. It's something you can do with your, it's not. And it just frightens me to death.
And I think a lot of it actually has to do with video game culture.
Yep.
So,
Sir, at the back, sorry, sir.
Change the subject.
Yes.
I think it was maybe close to a year ago, there was an article either in The Economist or New York Times about increasing filming of Indian film in Europe because of subsidy from the government.
You're absolutely right. Switzerland is a case in point. About 20, 25 years ago, Switzerland, even in the way back in the 50s, many films they're selling for Hindi films was that this particular sequence was shot in Germany or London or Paris, evening in Paris and evening in London. But the Swiss government realized, I think about 25 years ago, that if they offered subsidies to Hindi filmmakers, and it worked. Even today, many filmmakers, New Zealand is another country that offers subsidies. A lot of our films get shot in New Zealand. I'm just going to shoot a film in Prague because they're offering subsidies. Yes, you're right. So Europe realizes that there's a lot of, Scotland, Wales, these people also offer subsidy to Hindi filmmakers, which is fantastic. They've got restrictions, You've got to use a certain amount of local technicians.
Like you have to, if you get money from the German government or from Luxembourg, you will have to have a certain actor, a certain percentage of your actor, your cast has to come from a certain region, or all your post-production, 30% of your production has to happen there. So it still has to be structured in a way, but you can get lots of money in Europe because Europe actually celebrates the arts and culture in a way that's really important to kind of education. So they like investing
You're right.
in a lot.
So it's purely for financing reason, and it doesn't add any marketing prowess to it.
I mean, no one, I mean, like we're shooting this film in Prague, I don't think anyone there is actually going to end up seeing the film. So it's not...
Does it sell more in India because it was filmed in Prague?
Well, they wanted to show that particular scene in London, but it's much more expensive to shoot in London. So they're shooting in Prague for financial reasons. Plus the government is... But will that film get shown in Prague? No. So that the viewing market is not there. Yes?
They show Bollywood movies on daytime television in Italy. I've seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it is kind of a cultural thing too. I think that Indian culture and Italian culture are actually pretty similar. So the movies are completely dubbed in Italian except for the musical parts.
Right, right.
And they're older movies too.
Yeah.
But I think that, Indian culture resonates with Italian culture too.
And
Much more than it would in America.
But then again, you even have like Bollywood during certain times very popular in Russia, or Indian films in Hindi.
Sorry.
I've had this conversation.
You were speaking yesterday at the dinner table that you had a small part in the movie Gandhi, and I don't know what you think of the movie, but it's one of my very, very favorites.
Brilliant.
Can you tell us about your experiences?
Well,
and I've also
yeah,
heard that the gentleman who played the main actor has
Ben Kingsley.
he's pretty big on himself, but
You have to call him Sir Ben. You have to say Sir.
Sir, okay.
yeah.
Sir Ben.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway, I was just wondering about your
it's interesting because I'd worked with Richard Attenborough in the Chess Players, which was before he made Gandhi. He and I became very good friends. In fact, I must tell you a quick story. Nasiruddin Shah. How many people know Nasiruddin Shah? Okay, fine. Nasir's great dream in life was to play Gandhi. And when he knew that I knew Richard Attenborough and Richard Attenborough was playing Gandhi, Nasir said, "Yeah, speak to Richard." I did. And Richard Attenborough was very interested in Nasir to play Gandhi. Took him to London for a screen test. He eventually didn't take Nasir. And I said, "Richard, why?" And he said, "Tom, your friend is a brilliant actor, but his face is too hard. He is not the Gandhi that I had in mind." Okay, that's one story. We worked together in Shatranj Ki Khiladi, which I played an English officer, Western, to his Utro. I tried to fake a British accent. Well, he got taken in. We're shooting in Pune at the Aga Khan Palace, where the scene in Gandhi which I'm involved in is when Kasturba dies. And she actually, we shot it in the place where she actually died in the Aga Khan Palace. I'm playing the doctor, unsuccessful doctor, because she dies. So there was a scene before that when this British fellow comes and says that she's had a coronary thrombosis or something. I've got to say, this sounds quite serious. So I said it, and Richard Attenborough said, "Cut." He said, "You're not English?" I said, "No." "Oh my God." I said, "Sir, my accent didn't work." And the chap who had to come and give the information, he had been flown in all the way from London. So I said, "I'll do." Anyway, we managed, but in that beautiful, beautiful scene, I mean, don't see it from me, but see the scene again when she dies. It's very eloquently shot and done. So we're there in this room, and it's evening time, and the cameraman is, I forget his name, he's won I don't know how many Oscar awards, this director of cinematography, sorry. And we had to sit in position for the lighting for about an hour and a half, and you can't move. So I had Kasturba's hand in, and I'm taking her pulse, and Gandhi is, Ben Kingsley is sitting there like this, is Gandhi. So I've been holding her hand for about 45 minutes, and I knew the actress. And after about 45 minutes, I said, "Sir, no chance, she's dead." And Ben Kingsley gave me a look, like, "Shut up." So I shut up. I didn't try to make any more Woodstock jokes. But just see the scene. It is so incredible. When the doctor comes walking down the corridor to the room, and it's an evening time, you can hear the footsteps of the doctor coming down. And it's this detailed work that the British do. Another thing, Scott Saab, I mean, you know how much I love tea. On this unit of Gandhi, we were allowed tea twice a day. 10 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you dared to ask for tea at any other time, it's like you insulted the Union Jack. But you'll love this. Richard Attenborough gave 6 months to shoot the film in India. 6 months. I'm talking about 1981 when there was no blooming cell phones and no internet and nothing. He had a session which ended on the 23rd of December, 3 months. Then he was going to take a Christmas and New Year break and then resume. He said, Tom, I've kept 7 days